Well, hello there. Glad you could join us. We got some nervous news today, I'm sorry to report. But after that, we're going to get into some more cat superstitions. We didn't quite get to all of them later on.
I think it's really important that we all know all of the cat superstitions. I wish there was one that said that if you take in a semi-feral cat, that you might wind up with ripped up screens in your house. I wish that had been a superstition because I'd have paid better attention to that.
We'll be sending a bill to the cat kingdom, wherever that is.
They call it the cat distribution system, that you don't need to go hunting up a cat. Cats will find you, and if you have any sort of a heart at all, they will become a member of your household. So I rather like that. There's no reason for anybody to be lonely or petless with the cat distribution system. But anyway, so we'll finish up with what I didn't get to yesterday. And I think we have kind of an interesting announcement to make. And it does, in a way, relate to cats, but also to health and balance. You know, that word we keep using around here, down the donut hole.
Yeah, way down.
Yeah, it is, but it's a very cool thing. I've experienced it myself.
Well, it's not as down as we're going to get at some point.
Right.
So
right.
It's not extreme quite yet.
Right. Well, Dave, speaking of extreme, there is an extreme drop-off on tourism to the United States. We've mentioned it before. The situation just gets worse and worse. And
now, whatever could that be for?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe it has something to do with the shakedowns at the border where people are having their phones searched. Get this. I've read now a few times that other countries are putting up travel advisories against tourism to the United States for their citizens because of, and this is no surprise, this is right and proper, I think, because of the potential of gun violence in the United States, number one.
Yeah, well, that's not new.
That's not new,
Sadly.
and it's justifiable. And I think we're going to see that just get bigger and bigger because we're looking at the news every day, pretty much. There's some sort of a shooting where random people are being picked off, and that's absolutely not okay. And we can pretend that that's our right to carry arms, but in the wrong hands, it's like anything else. You know, I saw a story the other day about a little, I think he was 7 years old, drove his parents' car to McDonald's with his little sister in tow early in the morning. And the police were called when someone passed the vehicle, and they got a hold of the kid. I guess he bumped into some barrier or a mailbox or something. I don't think it was catastrophic, but that was the end of his journey. And we all agree that a 7-year-old or anyone who hasn't been trained or is impaired in any way should not be behind the wheel of a car, because a car is like a weapon in that it has the potential to do grave damage to others. And I think that we really need to sort that out in our mindset, that not everybody should be able to carry a weapon, and that we have to do a much, much more thorough job of vetting who should have one and who shouldn't. So that's, a little bit of a correlation. Other issues being cited as reasons why tourists should think twice or perhaps not come to the United States are the shakedowns and our immigration policies, where they're just, rounding people up or suspecting that somebody is planning on overstaying their visit or some other violation of our immigration laws. And also,
what exactly is the shakedowns specifically that you've read about?
Well, I think that the biggest issue is now all these countries, including the UK, much of the EU, all these different countries, Australia and them, are saying that their citizens' privacy rights are being violated because our border customs people are going through their phones.
Is that right?
Yes.
How does that play out? I mean,
Well,
are they
to see if
actually physically taking them and searching through
Yes.
them, or is there some sort of AI thing that they're
Yes, they're detaining people.
plugging it into?
They're having the people surrender their phones. So now all of these countries that have put out these travel advisories against coming to the United States for their citizens are saying, if you do go, if you must go, then take a burner phone with you.
And a bulletproof vest. So do they think that everybody who wants to visit the U.S. is a spy or something?
No, they think that they have connections to terrorist organizations. And now, see, we've been very abroad in what we're calling terrorist organizations, because an organization that falls under that category is open to our being able to
do whatever we want.
Yeah, to detain them indefinitely without charges, to ship them apparently off American soil, all of these other things. And so those countries are saying use burner phones. Think about it, Dave.
How
Think
much
about
detail
that,
did you see about that? I mean,
a lot.
Are they doing this randomly, or if they look shifty,
Randomly.
or everybody? Not doing everybody.
No,
they
there
never
were
get them through the line.
Two young girls came for a visit. I forget their country. I think they were Germans. Teenage girls came to Hawaii, and they were turned back. They kept them in detention for a while, went through their phones, turned them back. And you know why? Because they hadn't booked a hotel for the first night. They thought that they had something else going on that was probably nefarious. 2 teenage girls. And so the girls said, well, we usually just do like youth hostels and we just show up. And we didn't know that would be a problem, or certainly we would have, but they shipped them right out. Wouldn't let them in, wouldn't let them enter.
Oh.
And so I know along the Canadian border over the weekend, I believe, they had set up a new checkpoint, a temporary checkpoint to get into British Columbia from the U.S. And in and out, of course, back and forth. And that the lines were 2 hours long. And the problem is there's an awful lot of common, everyday trans-border traffic for shopping, picking up groceries, entertainment, going to each other's countries' favorite restaurants, that type of casual traffic. And people were waiting in these long lines. And now I saw that those new IDs, I think they have a gold star on them. So if you...
All the real IDs.
Yeah.
How do we get along all those years with fake IDs is what I want to know.
That weren't real? Unreal?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, what's the opposite of real? Fake, right? So...
Or unreal.
We've been able to do pretty well with fake IDs all those years before.
Anyway, and I do believe that the message to the Canadian government is, hey, we aren't pals anymore, not like we used to be. We're kind of split. And you're certainly going to feel the lack of our trade a lot more than we will, and we don't care. We don't need you, but you need us, that kind of thing. And that was...
well, it was about with Canada specifically.
Yeah.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't need you for anything. You need us for everything. I'm thinking, well, if that's true, then why do we want to get Canada as a 51st state? Is my question.
Yeah.
If we get nothing at all from them.
Well, yesterday I saw that President Trump met with Prime Minister Carney, the newly elected head of Canada, and that he was very clear and very specific when he told President Trump, face to face, we are not for sale. Canada is not for sale. We have no intention of being purchased or becoming part of the United States. And that there are places, I thought it was a good example in terms of speaking in real estate language,
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
About Buckingham Palace and the White House. They're not for sale.
Didn't he say something like, you have a big background in real estate and all that, and I think you know what it means when something's not for sale.
Yeah, and it's not going to be for sale. everybody was pretty happy that it didn't turn into a Zelensky-type confrontation in the Oval Office, because that was hugely embarrassing. And I think anyone who doesn't see it as that certainly needs to brush up on their rules of hospitality, because that, in front of the whole world, was so humiliating. But I don't think Zelensky came off the worse for the wear as we did. So there was no name calling, but President Trump did say that, and I do quote, "never say never," in terms of our annexing Canada. And also that when he looks at the border, he realizes, and this is paraphrased, he realizes that it's an arbitrary line. And, he has a hard time respecting an arbitrary line like that.
Yeah,
was the
how is that
implication.
different from any other border?
I know. Like Mar-a-Lago, I'm sure that there's a very clear line of demarcation between, public land you can go on in Mar-a-Lago, and I'm sure he's very clear on that line of demarcation.
Even when a border is defined by a river, like on our southern border, that is also something that changes all the time. So that's arbitrary as well.
But naturally arbitrary. It's not like somebody's digging
Right.
new definitive sides or anything like that. He did not call Prime Minister Carney Governor Carney like he did not very long ago to Prime Minister Trudeau. He kept calling him Governor Trudeau. And that did not breed any goodwill with our northern neighbors.
No, I mean, what kind of a negotiation is that? If who would want to go down from president to governor? He should have offered him like king or something.
Yeah, I think
it's best. Title.
It's best we just steer away from that king stuff and dictator stuff, because it's just not. It's not something that you can keep reined in very well. So that the airline industries are suffering because tourism to the United States has dropped off 25 to 35%. A lot of flights to the United States from elsewhere, Europe, the UK, other parts of the world, are being, canceled or defunctified because of lack of usage. So that's going to affect the global economy in a big way, because tourism is a big driver of revenues for countries, including ours. And we just don't seem like a very fun place to be right now. In fact, I don't see anybody laughing. Do you?
No, not at all. And we have friends from Germany who were planning the trip over, and we were going to visit with them, and they're thinking they're not going to do that now.
Yeah, they don't know.
Yeah.
They'd hate to lose the money, but they're hoping that maybe they could, make other arrangements for another time. I don't know, but I appreciate how difficult that must be, because most people in our, socioeconomic category, you save for a long time for a big vacation. And if you have to make big changes or risk losing that deposit, or it's just really heart-wrenching, because there's even just psychologically, let alone the economic fallout from that. So that's sad news. I won't even call that nervous news. I'm just going to call that unnecessary. Let's say it's unnecessary. It's like when you see two neighbors who just can't seem to get along, and every time one or the other describes the situation, you're just left rolling your eyes thinking, this should not be happening. These are two nice people. I like both of them. And can't we just go back to the way we used to be and have it be easy, and look forward to each other's company and spend money in each other's homelands? And there was nothing wrong with that. And from my understanding, the reason for all of this is because our government believes that we need to police the northern border better because of fentanyl getting into this country from the north. However, the records of the last little while, it was only like 42 pounds. I mean, my purse weighs that, according to you.
On a good day. Yeah. Yeah, but that's quite a lot, actually. I had the idea it was a lot less. I didn't hear the statistic in pounds and weight necessarily, but percentage. The percentage of fentanyl that gets into the country is largely not Canada.
Right. Right. And it is a problem. It is a problem. Apparently, I saw something else. I didn't read the article. I just saw the headline that there was a car that was coming in from Canada that had cash, like a lot of cash. They had it in those vacuum bags, that you suck the air out of.
Oh, right.
That just blew my mind. Just see that.
Wasn't that Christy Nome, I think?
No, it has nothing to do with her.
That's a different story.
No.
Okay.
No, it does have something to do with her in the fact that she's Homeland Security, and so she'll have something to say about that, and she really is pushing for those real IDs to help
she
everything.
was carrying a lot of cash or something.
Yeah, she had a lot of cash.
Yeah.
But it wasn't vac-sucked.
How we don't know that, We can't say for sure that it wasn't.
That's true. Dave, I didn't see any report on whether it was or wasn't, but I would assume
there you
not.
go. They wanted to cover that up.
So, stop. Anyway, so that, I also saw that the UK has struck a big free trade deal with India.
Oh, okay.
So now that there's going to be huge tariffs on goods from the U.S., and we're slapping a lot of tariffs on stuff from outside, virtually from everywhere, that's going to be a very favorable deal for the UK and for India, who is a huge country. And so I feel like those kinds of deals point out very clearly that when it comes to modern trade, that what might have been okay decades and decades ago is not okay now and requires a lot more thought and understanding, because I think we blew it. Because India now, especially with this UK trade deal, they aren't in as big a rush to cut a deal with us. And I do believe that the current administration believed that Japan, South Korea, and India would probably be very quick to negotiate favorable trade deals with the U.S. But I think that all these other deals that are being struck internationally, we're carved out of the picture because nobody can get a handle on what we're about because we're inconsistent. It's like if you date somebody and, there for a while, they're all, sweet on you and calling you up and all of this and spending time with you. And then all of a sudden they ghost you or they're like a different person. Mm-hmm. And it's just a huge red flag. And you want to steer clear of that as much as you possibly can, because who's got the stamina for that?
Right. The honeymoon phase is over.
No, that's exactly right. So that I saw that on May the 13th, a 3-judge panel of the U.S. Court of International Trade is going to hear a lawsuit to strike down President Trump's tariffs. And it's being brought by a company. It's like a group of small business operators, entrepreneurs who import goods for, I don't know whether they're for parts or just goods that they resell here in the States. It's called VOS with periods after each of the letters, importers. And VOS Select is the name of it, against President Trump. And it's going to be evaluated under the Major Questions Doctrine. And that means that is this decision to impose these tariffs, is it of vast economic and political significance? And how will it affect the average citizen? These decisions that are being made. And if it can be shown that it will have a notable adverse effect on the citizenry, then that will be shut down. The administration's ability to operate these tariffs, to set down these tariffs, which are being levied under the Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977. Now, what's at stake here is whether or not that act can give the executive powers just to do this unilaterally without approval from Congress, from the legislative. And this court will likely look at that and say, there has been no emergency declaration, which in and of itself would allow them to stand on that act. And
the
then
problem with
issue
that
these.
is that it's very easy for them to just make the emergency declaration.
Yeah.
They have the ability to do that. That's the only problem with that plan.
Well, sometimes I believe that there's mechanisms for doing that it has to be endorsed by Congress and that. Now, what's interesting about this lawsuit is the plaintiffs, this group of entrepreneurial small businesses who rely on imports, they have an amicus brief that includes 24 notable Republicans, 3 senators, an attorney general, and 20-some former federal judges who are all saying that this is, will cause a vast economic problem for people. And so these are the same party. These are GOP elites who
so in that
have worked
way,
these big jobs.
They are actually confirming the fact that they know it'll affect them personally, because that's what amicus brief is all about. You're not directly involved in a lawsuit, but that there's something that you can identify with that will harm you or that you have an interest in indirectly. So they're kind of saying, hey, what you're doing here is going to hurt everybody, including us. Well,
they're saying that these tariffs are going to hit the income of most households annually by about $5,000, just under $5,000 if you want to be exact with the numbers, but close enough. And that's a huge hit. I mean, we've heard again and again since 2020, people were saying at the end of the month, I don't have any extra cash. I have no backup plan. I have no cash cushion of any level. I am just getting by because of high rents, because of the cost of living, groceries, everything else, fuel. And so they are saying this could be devastating and could spiral very easily out of control. So I think that's interesting that that's going to happen. What's also interesting is probably the outcome of that will force the Trump administration to send this to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court, what's really interesting, the sitting members of the Supreme Court have served as clerks, or the people that are on this amicus brief have served under some of these Supreme Court justices. And, when they were going through their law training and that sort of thing. And so there is an affinity on those levels. They kind of understand each other. So the Supreme Court will have to rule on that.
But they sort of owe something to the present administration for being in the Supreme Court to begin with. So there you go.
Well, there is the Trade Act of 1974, and people think that if this administration's ability to levy those tariffs under the Emergency Trade Act of 77, if that gets struck down and they say, hey, can't use that, doesn't qualify, there is no immediate threat. You haven't declared a threat or an emergency. None of that has happened, so you can't use that. People think they'll pivot to the Trade Act of 1974, which is a little earlier, predates the other, which is clearer that the executive
usually means
may...
that it's been changed and that the previous one is not applicable anymore. So they have to look at that, I suppose.
Well, this it sounds to me like it's a little more general, and it says that the executive may impose tariffs, duties, and restrictions. So they may have been able to use that act to levy these tariffs. But when we come back to this major questions doctrine, and then the Supreme Court will decide, is this ruling, is the levy of these tariffs going to do significant damage to individuals in this country? And it's highly likely that they're going to say, yeah, it is. And so then they can strike this right down for good. However, that's a process that takes time. And I think it's been shocking that the Supreme Court has ruled on so many things very quickly. It seems quickly, but that isn't always the case. And sometimes complicated issues, especially now, issues that challenge the limits of executive power or the limits of any of the powers of our three branches of government, those sorts of things seem to be coming up more and more and more. And certainly people that are concerned about authoritarianism and how that's playing out in these times in our democracy, people are very interested in making sure that we have the checks and balances and that they're active and useful and holding, that there's no serious challenge that would make any one of the three branches of government inert or unable to perform its function as a check or a balance.
However, the defense is just going to argue that this is a temporary problem. Like they've been saying from the beginning, it's going to hurt for a while, but hang in there because it'll be better. And a lot of people, believe that. So that's going to be their argument. It's going to be hard to disprove or prove.
Yeah, but how long is too long? And I think that's the thing. If they have indeed, and I believe they have, overestimated the public's ability to absorb additional expense on top of inflation, on top of loss of business, loss of trade, loss of tourism, all of this other stuff. And now, too, so many of those government jobs having gone away, that was a pathway for young ones coming out of college with an awful lot of student debt to get a gig, decent paying, health insurance, all of that stuff from our government, cut their teeth out there in the real world, and then begin paying back those loans. But now they're demanding payback of the loans with no forgiveness. They've taken away pathways for payment plans for people of less means economically, and that's not going to go away. And so that's going to sting households across the board. All of these farming tariffs, stuff that got imported from Canada, certainly wood, other things that the building trades depend upon, those are going to drive prices up. So none of this is making people think that, hey, I need to send my son or daughter to college because it's looking like it's going to be a very long time before there's good jobs that can address the debt that you accrue over those years of education. And so I would think that's going to be a problem. Nowadays, kids in the sciences, they're discouraged in this country from going to colleges. So what are you going to do? There's not really clear answers. And so I am hoping that some of these issues that come before the Supreme Court ultimately, that they're going to see that we need to really evaluate what does this mean for our citizenry and not just the 1%, as Bernie would point out.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Except that, like I keep saying, it's very frustrating of a concept, that's for sure. But they're allowed for some reason to show clear bias in their decisions.
Well, yeah. I mean, we shouldn't even know what their party affiliation is.
No,
and we should have long ago
the highest
forgotten
court in the
who
land
appointed them.
is the only one that apparently is able to show bias. I don't get that. I need somebody smarter than myself to explain that to me, why that's okay.
I need it explained to me, too. And if you do, I sure do.
So this all sounds pretty nervous. So what do we do to... A lot of people in these, I see a lot of people are just sort of eye rolling now, thinking, whatever,
oh God.
whatever.
Yeah, but you have to remember, it's only been 100 days. And I am an independent. I am looking for good stuff. I saw, a couple of things. They're talking, I'm seeing pop up in my news feed, these little articles that suggest that we're all going to be getting Doge stimulus checks not too long from now.
Oh, I see. So it'll just pay off the populace.
Yeah.
Okay,
we'll
whatever.
help you. We'll help you get through these hard times. Look how magnanimous we are. How about we don't do this?
Everybody's got their price, even the 99%.
Yeah. Swell. So that I don't know what the conditions or even if it's real about these Doge stimulus checks. It seems to me that there's been so many legal hassles associated with all of this, firing people, having to hire them back, answering lawsuits all over the place. And so...
what they're not making clear is that it's not actually a check like you think. It's going to be Dogecoin.
I don't want any of
the
them.
Cryptocurrency.
I'd rather have a stack of bingo tokens. So I don't know.
Yeah.
So that also, we lost another aircraft on the USS Harry Truman.
Is the same one?
No, that one's still down at the bottom of the sea.
No, I mean the same boat.
The same aircraft carrier, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
A pilot came in, and apparently there's a hook.
Yeah.
And
that's to slow it down, yeah.
And the hook didn't catch onto the airplane cable to slow it down, and it went right off the other end into the Red Sea. So there we go. Several more $1 million. Kerplunk.
Yoink.
Not good. Not good
How about
at
the
all.
person inside?
They're two guys. They ejected. They're okay, and that I am really thankful for. I do think that is a blessing, and I'm sorry that happened. But you have to think, how many times do they take off and land from that thing, and they get it right? All it takes is one mistake, and you've got millions of dollars, another millions of dollars down at the bottom of the sea. But they do really good work. And I'm not here to criticize the military because I don't care who you are. You're going to make a mistake occasionally. It's going to happen. In the case of that, it seems to be happening kind of a lot. But I would expect that the tension on that ship is really high almost all the time. And so I'm going to cut them a lot of slack for that. However, this is an issue that needs to be run right up to Mr. Hegseth's desk. So you don't get to wear the big hat unless you're willing to put up with and come up with solutions for a lot of nagging problems and situations. So that, now we were just talking about getting jobs. And I have bad news for underagers here in the state of Florida. You can't work.
Oh, man.
You can't work during school hours. You can't work overnight jobs.
The teenagers were really disappointed with that news.
Oh, they're heartbroken. Although I know there are some teenagers who would be so grateful for any work and being able to work like that. It was a proposal in front of the Florida legislature being pushed by our Governor DeSantis because there is a real lack of labor for jobs that are less than desirable. And so one of the proposals was to let the kids do it. Homeschooled kids that don't sit in a classroom during the day, they could work during school hours. 15, 14-year-olds, mostly the law was about allowing 17 and 18-year-olds to work late at night, overnight jobs that have been pretty not safe or undesirable because a lot of those jobs, let's be real, were done by undocumented immigrants. And now that they're gone in high numbers, there's a lot of job openings. But the ACLU and some of the other agencies said no. And so the Florida legislature turned that down. And I would say rightfully. So
yeah, that's good. That's good.
Childhood goes by fairly quickly. Mm-hmm. It doesn't seem it to the kids. But when you look back on your life, it's just a blink. And so It's best you learn as much as you can. And especially nowadays that college may not be available to everybody, then that's good to have that off the table. Now, that is enough of the nervous news.
Enough is enough.
Enough is
cat
enough.
Superstitions.
All right, couple of that.
We have to talk about cats, so
no,
we'll make it.
I was going to ask you, tell me about Purrfulness. Now, what we want to do is put up the sound. It's a purr sound.
Yeah, I don't have it ready right now, but you should have told me. But we can do it in the future.
Soon.
Yeah.
Soon. And can you describe what it is for us?
Well, that's a term that I coined, I think. I think it's been out there sort of informally here and there. I think people have done it just because it's sort of, I guess what they're describing is the fact that it's, very cozy to have a cat up against you or something or near you, and they start purring, and somehow it just makes you feel more relaxed.
Right.
And I understand that. And so I sort of semi-officially coined the term Purrfulness and studied, because it was fascinating to me that the purr is soothing, and what is the science or psychology behind that. And so I did a little research and found out that there are certain frequencies that do, and we find this out more and more now. They're talking about the relation between frequencies and beneficial actions to the human body and psyche and all that sort of stuff. And it has to do with the frequency. And so the purr obviously has a cyclical quality to it. And then depending on the animal, it will be a different frequency. The household cat, for instance, has a higher frequency than some of the wild cats, like cheetahs are the prime example, because they have the lowest frequency of any animal that purrs. And that's right around 40 hertz. So you have the primary frequency, which is what I just mentioned, and then you also have the repetition, the cyclical nature of it. So that also has its own waveform, if you will. And the frequencies are known to be beneficial, especially the 40 hertz, which is they also referred to as gamma synchrony. Gamma is one of the brain waves. One of the highest frequencies, actually. But to us, it's super low, because it's like, if you know anything about music, and I don't know much, but I do know that 40 hertz is the lowest note on a bass guitar. So, to our ears, that sounds like super low. And it does seem relaxing to hear frequency, relaxing to hear in that low range. So what I did was, a bit of my engineering background, is I created two frequencies that were close to 40. And actually 39 and 40 is one of them. And then when you combine those together, they create a secondary waveform, which is what you hear from a cat purr.
And that the cats purr, they say, to heal themselves. So this does have some basis, doesn't it?
It does have basis, and much to the chagrin of cat fans, it's not because that they're saying to you, "Oh, I'm so happy to be with you." That's pretty much been proven wrong. But, you can take that sort of thing however it works best for you. You can have your own reality about that. But apparently the cats are making this frequency inside them, and it will strengthen their bones. That's been shown to be true. And other healing processes in general.
But certain cats cannot purr. Lions can't purr.
That's right.
Purr.
The cat, and I think we mentioned this on a previous cast, that there's two kinds of animals within the cat kingdom, and that is the ones who roar and the ones who purr. They do one or the other. They don't do both.
And it's throat structure,
so
I understand.
The biggest cat that purrs is a cheetah. It's not the biggest animal, however, but we'll get into that some other time.
Well,
But anyway, they're the ones, depending on the animal, of course. If the animal happens to be smaller or not mature or something, they might not be right around that 40 hertz. It'll be something different. But
so this will go up as a short. So keep an eye out. We may debut it in one of the podcasts, but we'll put it up as a short term, short, so that you can tune in. And if you find it therapeutic when you're kind of stressed up or whatever, that'll be easy for you to access it, and and not just once, and you won't have to listen to all the nervous news to get to it. I
came up with sort of a breathing exercise to go along with that, to coincide with what you're hearing. And so it seems to work pretty well. A lot of people have tried it.
It does.
And a headset's best so that you can really hear that low frequency.
So we'll give you a better heads up about that. Now, you should know if your cat is having kittens in this month, it happens to be May, that they may have special powers. And I'm not sure what those special powers are, but that's the belief of cats born in May. Here's another one. Cats washing their ears often is a sign that rain is coming. And speaking of rain, there was a belief, and I think it is associated with cats maybe having an evil nature, that if you dumped water on your cat, that your cat would get really angry and ask whatever powers it could influence to make it rain to get back at you. And not just a lot, but, not just a little, but a lot of rain to get back at you, kind of retaliatory.
So there's a cat god, I guess.
I don't know.
The other one that I thought was interesting is that with this whole connection with sort of evil, and not just black cats, but the fact that the house cat is the only cat that has sort of like snake eyes, the vertical iris. All the other cats have round irises, and the house cat has more of a snake eye. And also, to go along with that, cats hiss like a snake. Hiss, hiss, hiss.
Yeah.
I did that last night, actually, and one of the kitten's ears perked up when I said I wasn't trying to sound like a cat hiss, but apparently it was still in that range.
If you get scratched up, don't come crying to me if you're provoking the poor little kittens.
So that's a superstition, people, however. So
there used to be a lot of superstition that pregnant women should stay away from cats, because if they spent too much time near a cat, that their baby would have a cat-shaped mole when it was born. So that they've pretty much proven that isn't true. In Germany, here's an interesting one. It's kind of the opposite of cat ladies who have a lot of cats and no man in their life. This is the opposite. This says that if a woman wants to attract a husband, she should feed her cats from her shoes.
How is that going to attract a guy?
You're a guy, you tell me. Is that irresistible to you?
It's completely resistible. Completely.
Okay. Well, we tried. If you dream of a tortoiseshell cat, you'll be lucky in love. And
what is a tortoiseshell cat?
The ones that have kind of a mottled fur, kind of with dots and
not
different
calico.
Colored, kind of, but darker. Not like Kelly's calico with lots of white and orange and black, but tortoiseshells are more, I think, have a darker background.
Okay.
Let me think. Do I have anything else? Pretty much no, but it's okay because we're just about out of time.
Oh, perfect.
Yes. Update, Kelly has ripped more holes, and I found out that it isn't that she wants to take the kittens so much to a different place. She's got a boyfriend out there that she's meeting.
Oh, great. Here we go again.
And it looks an awful lot like Sassy, and I saw that guy around before. So Kelly is supposed to go herself, but now it's being pushed off again till Monday. It's really hard to get a fixed date to fix your cat. So anyway, that seems to be a moving goalpost, but we'll keep you up to date on that. And I have to say, count your blessings. There are many, and watch for this Purrfulness thing and some other stress reduction ideas that we have that we will put
We'll
in.
play a sample on a future show and
Okay.
then refer you to the short when it's up.
Okay, sounds great. Have a great day, everyone.
Yep, I know.